this next guest, I'm surprised he was willing to come on a day I'm here. I figured he'd wait for Will to be back. I know him. He sends me his books sometimes when they're just getting released, so I'll post about them. An absolute, just one of the most impressive human beings. We're talking about a Navy SEAL who becomes an author. Not just an author, but I mean, you got Tom Clancy, Patterson, then you got Jack Carr, and you got everything he's written. I'll be completely honest with you, it's hard for me to read anything anymore, but what this guy puts out is just a lot of fun. It's entertaining, and if you don't want to read it, well, they turn them into TV shows. So we're going to bring in now Jack Carr, author. He's on the set right now, actually, of one of his shows. I think I'm trying to make notes here because I can't keep up. I mean, you have sent me a couple of books, and I'm halfway through, I think, the second one you sent me. And then now the book that's out now is Cry Havoc. Is that right?
That is coming out in October, and it's I guess we call it a prequel, but it's the father of my protagonist, James Reese, and it goes back to 1968 Vietnam and shows how he goes from a SEAL assigned to MACV-SOG
awesome.
to Laos, and then his transition into the CIA. But it's really an espionage thriller set in Laos, Saigon, Bangkok, Moscow, Washington, D.C. And that was a crazy one because you have to write every single sentence through the lens of 1968, which ended up taking a lot longer than I anticipated. It was supposed to come out in June, but because all of that research took so long, it's coming out October 7th.
Yeah, I mean, just think of like the cultural references you can't use in a book like that. That really, how do you even put yourself there? I mean, you might be a little bit older than me, but you're not 1978 adult older than me. Like, how do you put yourself there? How do you just have a lot of good friends that help with that? How do you do that?
I did. I talked to a lot of Vietnam veterans that were in MACV-SOG, and I thought that I had a solid foundation as far as, well, the history of warfare, but specifically Vietnam, because coming up in the 80s, that was, well, the cultural references and impacts were in movies and TV shows and books had protagonists with backgrounds from Vietnam, either as like Marine snipers, Army Special Forces, Navy SEALs, CIA paramilitary officers, things like that. So I thought that I had a fairly good understanding of Vietnam, and then I started doing the research. And I realized that I'd really only scratched the surface. But what made it take so long is that every character can only have their experience up to 1968. So that perspective has to only come from someone, let's say, born in 1945, 1950, like that sort of a thing, rather than having 55 years of hindsight since 1968 to go back. So I had to try to keep everything, every perspective through the lens of 1968, not leap forward. So it was, it took a while, but it was amazing. It was an incredible experience. I learned a ton.
I mean, we got so much more to talk about, but that's so interesting to me because, now I can sit and watch the Turning Point series on Netflix, and it's like addressing the Cold War and all this that we know today that maybe I don't know if it was suspected then or not. And really, like what was conspiracy then versus what is known as fact now. And what was someone's mindset? Like, what did a conservative person think in 1968 versus a conservative person today? I mean, we have Republicans and conservatives voted for a president that said no new wars because of Iraq. And in 1968, the majority of conservatives probably still supported Vietnam. And it's like, and that war. And it's like, well, then just go back 10 years from now and where were conservatives in supporting the war? And it's just this idea. I bet you had so much fun, but I bet it also challenged you to kind of maybe not reevaluate, but hone your own political or maybe even larger than political, like worldview.
It definitely did. And now, going 55 years forward and having that benefit of hindsight and declassified documents and perspective. All of that wasn't available to somebody in 1968. They only had the information available at the time and their life experience up to that time. So, but it did. And finding out things that were, let's say, kind of accepted just because we've heard it so many times, like you just mentioned about conservatives supporting the war still in 1968. Then you have Nixon running on this platform that left it kind of ambiguous. He was a genius as far as it went when it comes to communication, because you could really take from what he said whatever your perspective was, and it was fascinating to look at that election and everything that happened afterward, of course, as well.
Listen, I consider your work to kind of transcend partisan politics. I know that you don't like hold your political beliefs in a lockbox, but I mean, you work with mainstream Hollywood and you work with everybody that wants to read something other than what we're dealing with in the moment. But you're also a smart guy and you're a student of history. And I think this topic I want to bring in absolutely connects with what we're talking about with this perspective, looking back. You know, we talk about what was a conspiracy in 1968 versus what is reality today. And the topic, the news of the day, is that Tulsi Gabbard, someone you and I both know, and I think we would say respect, somebody posted a flattering tweet about her the other day, and I'm like, you're just scratching the surface, man. Like, she's a real deal. But she's come out and she said, listen, she believes from the documents and the intelligence and how the intelligence was moved forward that at the very worst, the President Obama's administration manufactured what we now call Russiagate, and at the very least, they threw it out there in a way that was misleading. And, you know, I'd love just your opinion on it or your take on it, your perspective on it, having gone through this process of a Kennedy administration, a Nixon administration, a Johnson administration, and learning all that we know about that and all that they did well and bad and writing this book. And now it's like we're living through it.
Well, there's so many similarities in that there's a gigantic bureaucracy, and there was then, there is now. It's even bigger now, more dependent on government even now. The government has more, not just the government, the media also has different ways they can manipulate thoughts and behaviors through devices we carry around in our pockets constantly. So there's differences in technology and how to manipulate a populace, but some of those same principles apply, is that you really are manipulating a populace. And when people talk about the deep state, maybe there is a deep state, but maybe it's just this gigantic bureaucracy with entrenched people in there who have biases and have agendas that don't change out with administrations oftentimes. We're seeing a little more of that now. But really what Tulsi did last week to release these documents to the public, not just a paper that says this is what we have in these documents. No, you can go out there and you have to do the work and you have to read through these things, but they are publicly available to all Americans right now. You can go out and you can read them and you can see what happened. And what's interesting is that the people's attention spans today, if this had come out, let's say in the late 60s, mid 70s, I think it would be different because people could go into those documents, could spend time reading them, and weren't distracted by the next thing, whatever that is, from these devices that are made to keep us from doing that deep research or that deep thinking. And it's not even that deep thinking. It's just taking an hour to read something. And that today is very difficult to get people to do. But what it really is about trust in our elected representatives and trust in the system, those entrenched bureaucrats that are in there that are supposed to be working for us, who we are paying, who are our employees, essentially manipulating and undermining a presidency in advance of a new president taking office. And people are saying that it is one of the biggest scandals in American history, and they're probably right. But we have to go in there and do the work and read these documents to really understand what happened and how that did undermine a presidency. And the credibility of the intel services, once again, that we pay for. So there are a lot of different facets to this, and hopefully we don't get distracted by the next big thing too quickly, and remember this and make some changes because of it.
I love that I threw it out there to let you go where you wanted to with it, because I think you're probably smarter than me, and I see things sometimes at a surface level, but it's like the headlines are going to be President Obama spies on Trump, or President Obama, creates Russiagate for Trump. Really what you're talking about is kind of the underlayer below that, this idea that like all of these intelligence officials that came out in support of it, or all these intelligence officials that pushed it along. And so then my question to you is, as a guy who's researched our intel community probably as much as anybody, I mean, I don't know how many spooks you got on a Rolodex, but I feel like you probably know a few from all levels. Where is our intelligence community? I mean, are they a net negative? Or all they do is start wars for us? Or are they a net positive? They keep the enemy at the gates? Like, what is your opinion on that?
Well, if it's put to me that way, I would say net positive, of course. Because,
all right.
But people are fallible. These institutions are manned by people who are fallible. We all are, and these are just people in these positions. And a lot of times, these people that we're talking about are that we didn't elect them; they were appointed to these positions. And they went in front of Congress. They answered a few questions, and some were tough, and some were softballs. Fine. Then they get into these positions. They just have to get through it. But they're essentially appointed by that person who is in who's in the Oval Office or by that administration or through recommendations from those close key advisors. So I would say it's still a net positive because you had a lot of great people that are working there for the right reasons, that want to come out, they want to serve their country. Maybe they do it in the military, maybe they do it in intelligence service, maybe they do it in law enforcement, maybe they do it in a federal law enforcement capacity. But a lot of people are in these positions that want to serve their country and do the right thing. But just like in any institution, military included, there are people along the way that are careerists or that have an agenda or that think it's their responsibility to undermine this great evil, in this case, Trump, and anything, and that makes anything not only possible, but like a job requirement essentially for them. And so I think we saw that in this case, but from the highest levels all the way down, it really permeated, and all of those people seem to have connected on this to try to undermine a new presidency. So that, of course, is not what an intel community or the CIA specifically is there to do. Of course, they're there to gather intelligence, present that to the commander in chief so that they can make decisions based on the best information available. And in this case, it seemed like they did the opposite. So in any big bureaucracy where that has a lot of power, obviously there is they can use that for ill, and that's what we saw in this case. But I'd say net, there's still a positive, but changes definitely need to be made, and we're doing that right now, like we saw with Tulsi and doing what she did on Friday. So the intel community is on notice.
I don't know if Tulsi's a Republican or a Democrat, but she's certainly a change agent. And, it's almost an oxymoron. Like, let's bring transparency to these clandestine agencies. But, I've never doubted really that the foot soldier of a CIA is risking their life and oftentimes losing their life for a cause they believe in. It's just that connection of, is the cause that they were given and believe in the will of the American people, and how do you connect those two things if it is so clandestine and is so, you can't trust anybody, so don't tell anybody. And, after 9/11, we learned that to the very least we have to talk to each other within agencies. Maybe after this, we learned that there does need to be some sort of open door, some way of knowing what's going on in a way that we shouldn't just default to distrust, not just our government, but especially those in these agencies that are keeping us safe. Or we could just, read your stuff, watch your shows, and gain an appreciation on a whole nother level and check out of it for a day or two. I think you're on set right now. Can you tell us about it?
I am. Well, I was going to say oversight is certainly a good next step. We always talk about oversight of these different agencies, but we're really seeing it now. We have people in place, I think specifically Tulsi, who wants to bring that oversight and that accountability to these agencies that have grown so large and so powerful. So I think that's a great step. But yes, I must apologize for my background because I'm on in a hotel room and headed to set here soon. We have helicopters flying. We have things blowing up today. It's for the second book, True Believer. But I wanted to congratulate you on #1 New York Times bestseller and still on the list. I have multiple weeks on the list. So congratulations on the new book. That's fantastic.
Man, I appreciate it. I don't have the imagination for fiction, so I just tell other people's amazing stories. And in this book, I think it's an important one. It's about first responders. And I think the point I make is we're about 2 decades behind military on acknowledging what they go through and how we can take care of them. But you're on the set right now. So I know in Terminal List, you made a cameo and then were killed. So are we going to see you, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, make a cameo? Or I don't know what the set you're on now, but are we going to see you come back as somebody else and maybe die in another creative way?
I say that's keep your eyes peeled. That is a distinct possibility. We have the prequel origin story series drops on August 27th, and it's called Dark Wolf. And yeah, keep your eyes peeled in that one. And just perhaps it might tie back to something we just talked about a little bit earlier. So I'll leave it at that because we're still a couple weeks out from the premiere.
Man, I love it. It's so awesome. I want to talk to you real quick. I mean, we got a few minutes left. You're a United States veteran, Navy SEAL. I'm Marine Corps EOD tech. And, we have platforms where we have an effect in media, you much greater than me. But what is your thoughts on not just the impact veterans have after service, but the responsibility they have to have an impact? I mean, people ask me, what can I do for a veteran? And I always say, expect something of them. Like, that's my first answer. What are your thoughts on that as someone who has gone in what I would consider most people to think is a completely different direction than learning how to kill people well and being creative and a student and a historian and creating fiction and doing all the things you've done? What is the impact a veteran can have, and how do we get them to have it?
Well, so there's a lot of overlap actually to what I did in the SEAL teams, what we did in the military, and what I'm doing now, and that we were aggressive problem solvers on the battlefield. And that's what I'm doing now, although the consequences are a lot less dire. If I mess something up, I can go back and edit it the next day, and that's fine. No one comes home in a body bag. But I'm still looking at how to capitalize on momentum. I'm still looking for gaps in the enemy's defenses. I'm still trying to adapt to, in this case, the publishing environment or a changing environment in Hollywood. But on the battlefield, we're trying to adapt to an enemy who's trying to adapt to us. And whoever does that quicker usually ends up on top. So there are a lot of similarities, not just to, and that's not just for what I'm doing now. I think that's just life in general, whatever you're going to step into after you leave the military. But what's interesting about people who have served, I think, is that they've invested, because this country gives us so much, gives us so many options and opportunities, no matter where you're born, what's given to you or not from birth. You can make your own decisions and you can forge ahead on your own path. And if you step into the military or law enforcement or whatever it might be, you're now investing in this thing called America. And a lot of people don't. They just take the options and opportunities, and that's wonderful. That's fine. But I think if you invest in it, then there's a different outlook on all of this because you have put something in, whether that's a couple of years or it's 20 years or 30 years or anything in between. That's why I think that some sort of national service helps, because it gives us all something in common. Like, you were a Marine, I was a SEAL, but we share something in common that we served, and we've invested in this thing called America. So for me, when people ask what they can do for a veteran, it's not really much you can do for a veteran. That veteran needs to be prepared for someone to extend that hand or to open that door, to crack it just a tiny little bit, and then it's up to them to kick it in. Nothing needs to be given, of course. But I think the most important thing is that we've invested, and that's a little bit of different perspective. I think in the late 70s or early 70s, I think we had the most amount of veterans serving in Congress at the time, and it slowly dwindled ever since. And I think that was important because those guys had invested, primarily World War II veterans back then, but they'd invested in this thing. So they wanted to hand it off to the next generation because of not just their blood and sweat, but the blood and sweat and the deaths of their friends, their teammates, who a lot of them are still over in Normandy and places around the world. So it's a little just different perspective, I think. So it's not really what you can do for a veteran. I don't think about it in those terms, but more that hey, the veteran needs to be prepared to kick the door, and also look at that service as a foundation upon which to build. So it's not, you're not stuck in what you did in the past. It's more so, hey, like anything else, I'm building on this foundation, whether it was, good or bad experience, good or bad, positive or negative, but it's still some sort of a foundation upon which to build. So cracking that door, and then veteran, it's up to you to kick it in.
Hey, real quick, this is kind of an off-the-wall question for you, but it's something that I'm figuring out for myself right now. I've got this farm that I call a playground. I've got a skeet shooting range. I'm about to put in some bow targets. You're a guy that understands history of war, but you also understand weapons. I mean, you kind of have to do the TV shows you're doing and not get just skewered in public. If somebody's out there and they want to learn a weapon system of any kind, I'm talking bow and arrow, compound bow, long bow, how to wield a sword or a knife, how to throw an axe, how to shoot a pistol, shotgun. Like, what is it? What would you tell somebody? Hey, go learn this skill.
Well, I think it's start off with that foundation, like we just talked about, like unarmed combat. That's a good place to start because you're working on your body, you're working on your mind, you're problem solving, you're doing all those things, and then ramp it up from there. Because once you have that, you kind of get this other type of an awareness. Because really, as providers, as citizens, it's really up to us to protect the gift of life that we have, and then those that we love, our spouses, our children, our communities, our tribes, essentially. That's right. So I like that ramp up to that the unarmed combat having all be part of a greater mosaic that makes you better prepared or better prepared to actually avoid a confrontation rather than jump right into it. But starting with that unarmed combat type, that jujitsu, that kickboxing, that MMA type stuff that you can find pretty much anywhere now. And then at the same time, or whenever one is comfortable, moving on into something, going to a gun site or a Thunder Ranch or somewhere like that, where you learn those skills with a pistol, and then you have the rifle and the shotgun, and you just become a more competent competent person, a more competent citizen, a more competent human being. Not that you're actually maybe going to use them, but you can. And that's really why we're here today, is because we had ancestors who were good at that. They were good at the fighting and they were good at the hunting. And if they weren't, we would not be here today. And there's something like that. It's in our DNA. It's still there. A lot of people have suppressed it or been told to suppress it by popular culture in general, but it's still in there. And it's good to listen to that call. Like you had that calling to join the military. I had that call. We listened to that call. I had that call to write afterward. I look at them both as professions. It's a reason it's called the profession of arms, not the career of arms. Same thing with writing, what I'm doing now. I think there's a difference between a profession and a career. For people that want to get into it, I encourage them to do so, because that's a calling too. Like, I should know how to protect myself, this gift of life, and my family. How do I do that? Oh, here's my first step. And I think that's the unarmed combat and ramping up into these other skill sets with pistol, rifle, shotgun, bow, learning how to hunt. There's something about putting that food on the table for your family, providing for the family, something very natural about that. So if you suppress it, you're kind of suppressing a part of yourself.